My name is Kate O'Connor, and I'm the Executive Director of the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you all here today on behalf of our Board of Directors who are all scattered around here. This is our annual Lunch with the Governor, and we of course want to extend a special welcome to our Governor, Governor Phil Scott. And before I turn the podium over to the Governor, I want to thank the generous sponsors of today's lunch. We have Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, Brattleboro Retreat, Brattleboro Savings and Loan, Brattleboro Subaru, Faith's Ford, the Richards Group, and the School for International Training at World Learning. They are all examples of the great businesses and organizations we have in our area. And they are not only successful, but they are dedicated and active members of our community. And we very much appreciate your support for the Chamber and for the community. If you want to read more about them, there's a directory on everyone's table, and you can take it with you and read more about all of our sponsors. And again, we really appreciate your support. And they're all sitting around here too if everybody wants to thank them after the lunch. Again, Governor Scott, I want to welcome you to Brattleboro. You were here for 2 chamber events as a candidate, and we're pleased to have you here today as governor. This lunch is, as I said, an annual event for the chamber, and we're very happy that Governor Scott is here to carry on the tradition for us. Governor Scott is here to speak to us, but he's also here to hear from us. So when the governor is done speaking, we're going to open the floor for questions. So get ready, everybody start thinking. For those of you who don't know, Governor Scott lives in Berlin. He's the 82nd governor of Vermont. And prior to taking office, he served 10 years in the Vermont Senate and 6 years as Vermont's lieutenant governor. Until he was elected, he was the co-owner of his family's construction company and was, or possibly is, and the governor can answer this question, a race car driver. He'll tell us when he gets up. He has to tell us if the state police let him be a race car driver. So, without any further ado, I want to introduce the Governor of the state of Vermont, Phil Scott.
Thank you very much. It really is a pleasure for me to be here today again to talk to you about the priorities of my administration and how we're working to make a difference in the lives of Vermonters. So what I'm going to do is I have some prepared remarks for about 10 minutes or so, maybe 15, and then we'll open it up because I do want to listen to you and hear your thoughts about what we can do to make Vermont even better. If there's one thing that I've learned over my decades of business ownership, as well as stock car racing, and now nearly 2 decades of politics, is that the greatest successes really happen when you have a strong team. None of us can accomplish what we do without surrounding ourselves with people that are better than ourselves. So I found that firsthand. Obviously, I took all the skills that I've learned over these last few decades, and when I became elected, I remember the day of the election. As an aside, and I remember the media was asking me whether I was nervous about what was going to happen that night. And obviously, it was, I didn't know what the results were going to be, what the outcome was. I thought it was going to be a very tight race. And, but I was comforted by the fact that we had run the race that I wanted to run. I didn't allow ourselves to be pulled down into the mud. I just wanted to keep it clean, run a positive campaign based on the issues, and talk about what I thought we could do for Vermont. And let the chips fall where they may, because regardless of the outcome, I was very proud of the campaign we ran, and that's the way I've conducted my life. It's just about treating others with respect and civility, and treating others the way I want to be treated. So it's pretty simple in that regards. But when I was first elected, the very next day, faced with the reality of developing a budget, developing policies, following through on promises I made during the campaign, and then hiring your team. And so then how do you do that? We had hundreds and hundreds of applicants to fill, probably 100 positions right off the bat. Secretaries, commissioners, direct appointees, and so forth. So I look at everything interview through the 4 C's is what I call them. The first C is about character. The applicant, the person I'm interviewing, has to have character and integrity in order to move further. And if they don't have that, then we don't need to talk a whole lot more. So that's the first C. The second C is competency. They have to be competent in the area that I'm looking for them to serve, obviously. They need to have, that broad knowledge of the substance, but also be a quick study and be able to be open-minded about change and what we can do better in that regard. The third C is about commitment to the process, the tough road ahead, that you have to put in the long hours and the work ethic that's involved. And I think that's really, really important. And as well, to share in my vision about a better Vermont. So that's important. But the fourth one is very difficult to measure. It's something that I'm sure all of you have run across, but it's chemistry. Being able to put together a team that has the right chemistry, the right attitude, because as I've seen, again, in all the endeavors I've been involved with, you can put all the most highly talented, qualified people in one room and never achieve success because they don't have the right attitude. They can't work together. And so it's really important that you put all the pieces of the puzzle together in order to do that. So I'm proud of the team that we built with no litmus tests whatsoever. Some had to ask me whether they had to be a Republican in order to serve. And I said, no, they have to have common sense. They have to have integrity, those 4 C's. They have to be good managers. I mean, I'm just looking for talent is what I'm looking for. So again, I've built a pretty good team, I believe, and I believe that we can be successful if we all work together. So as one of my first acts as governor, I issued an executive order, and this is one of those good executive orders, So outlining the strategic goals for my administration, really 3 very simple principles that guide us in every policy, every decision we make. And it really is, and again, very simple, but it's about growing the economy, making Vermont more affordable, and taking care of the most vulnerable. So those 3 guiding principles are what we ask ourselves every day about some of the issues that we're faced with. So we've been working on, since that day of issuing that executive order, we've been working to try and change how we think about what state government does, how our policies, processes, and activities help us work towards these goals. So there are also 3 numbers that and you may have heard me talk about these over the last few months, certainly since the campaign. But they really sum up the challenges we face, and those numbers are 6, 3, and 1. And these 3 numbers literally keep me up at night, and something I think about every single day. It's because of some of it's because of our stagnant population and changing demographics. We're getting older, and we have to, but we're not growing that younger population. So these 3 numbers again highlight these worrying trends. So the first one, the 6, is every day that we wake up, we have 6 fewer workers in our workforce every single day. And that's something that we've been facing for the last decade or so. There's less people working today than there were 7 or 8 years ago. So that's a worrying trend, something we have to fix. Because as I said this during the campaign, we've lost 30,000 people out of the category from 25 to 45. That's what our census told us. So when you think about what that means, those are the folks that buy homes, have families, utilize services, buy products, and then they pay taxes on top of that. So if we don't have those 30,000 people in the workforce, then it puts the burden on the rest of us who are still here. So that's part of our problem. So there's the 6. The 3 is along the same lines. Is we have every day that we wake up, we have 3 fewer students in our K through 12 education system than we had the day before. So on average, over the last 20 years, we have 20,000 less students than we had 20 years ago. So there's a trend that is taking us. Our costs are going up. Our student population is declining. So it's another area that we have to address. The one is in particular something that really is something that affects us every single day, and that's the one baby born to an addicted mom every single day. And that's some of the challenge that we face. But in addition to representing the challenge, I believe that those numbers also represent our opportunity, because when, and not if, but when we reverse these trends and these numbers are reduced, we'll know we have turned the corner and we'll have a much more prosperous Vermont as a result. And when our team thinks about how to address these numbers, we always start with strengthening our economic foundation and making Vermont more affordable. One tool that we have in our economic development toolbox is a world-class education system. If Vermont becomes an education destination, we will attract more young families and teach and train a strong, talented workforce. It also works towards reducing that 3 number in the 631 dilemma that we face. So that's why my budget calls for an increase in state support for early childhood care and learning, and looks at education as a cradle to career journey from early care through adult education and trades training. So again, I explained this before, but we're spending $1.6 billion to educate 86,000 kids at this point. And again, 20,000 less than 20 years ago, $19,000 per student. So we spend this much for K through 12 education. In terms of early childhood care and learning, we spend about this much. In terms of higher education, we spend this much. So what we need to do is not spend more money, but reallocate the money that we already spend in the K through 12, broaden that out so we use some of that and target and invest in early childhood care and learning and in higher education. Because again, when you think about it, we know the research is real. The child's brain develops immensely fast at 0 to 5. So if we can catch them early and build their strong foundation, we'll have better social outcomes as a result. We'll save money in the future. We'll produce those workers in our workforce that we need so desperately here. As well, when we think about higher education, it's not just about 4 years of school, but it's about trades training. It's about, we need, the average age of a construction worker in Vermont right now is about 56 years old. And when I look at, when you think about what our needs are going to be in the future, it's about our electricians and plumbers and mechanical and diagnostic folks. I mean, here's a table over here that understands that. It's no longer just a mechanic that changes, does a tune-up and changes spark plugs. It's about diagnostics, and it's much more intricate and it needs much more training. So we need more tradespeople as a result. So across the board, whether it's a CDL or whether it's your apprenticeship or your master's license or whatever it is, or a 4-year degree, we need more of it. So we need to invest in those areas in order to accomplish that. And so with just a little bit of cooperation from the legislature, I still believe that we can make great strides in getting towards that vision this year. Specifically, we have an opportunity to save up to $26 million a year, up to $100 million over 5 years in our education system, without program cuts or asking teachers to pay more for benefits. The Federal Affordable Care Act, which was enacted by President Obama, did away with high-valued health plans by imposing a so-called Cadillac tax on these plans. So the Vermont Education Health Initiative, or VHI, which is the administrator charged with transitioning to these plans, proposed another set of plans that will be substantially less money than existing plans and will not be subjected to this federal penalty. So I put forward a proposal developed with the Vermont School Boards Association and the Vermont Superintendents Association that creates an opportunity for a common statewide health benefit by negotiating separately with education employees in one place. So it'd be a statewide contract for health care benefits only. And from there, they would be able to negotiate with their school boards for pay and benefits and other provisions that they normally do. So it's estimated that this approach would save up to $26 million every year while preserving high-quality healthcare coverage for our school employees without asking them to pay any more. So if you think about that, when was the last time we had an opportunity to reduce education costs by millions of dollars without asking employees to pay more or cutting services? Not in my lifetime, but here we have an opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So imagine what we could do with these ongoing savings. If we had $26 million, we could return some to taxpayers, which I've heard loud and clear throughout Vermont that they believe our property taxes are too high. So we could return some to them. We could also invest in childcare and early education, which I think is a good investment. We could reduce the cost of college for those who, or higher education, for those who need that and want that. Or we could better manage our obligation to teachers' retirement as well, which is getting out of control. So what we can't do is leave these savings on the table, and the time now is to act. So this is an incredible opportunity, and I hope the legislature will join me in supporting it. The House is voting on it today, so we'll see where we go from here. But I believe this is an area that if we could just take the politics, put that aside, I just believe this is the best approach for Vermont and something that will bring us benefits in the future. So to grow the economy, we need to look more for more business, and what better opportunity do we have than to look to our neighbors to the north, which is Canada. Quebec is currently our #1 trading partner, and that's why I've made already 3 trips to Canada, meeting with the Quebec Premier Couillard and Ontario Premier Wynne, and as well as meeting with about 20 other businesses. Now, Toronto was interesting when I went there, and again, it's fertile ground for us in some respects. I don't know how many of you know this, and maybe some of you have been to Toronto, but Toronto is now the 4th largest city in North America. So we have New York, LA, Mexico City, and Toronto. And it's within 1 hour of flight time out of Burlington. So when we went there, they speak, 52% of their population is made up of immigrants. They speak about 150 languages. So we have a flight that goes there twice a day. And so what we found was there's going to be a pre-clearance opportunity, a customs clearance opportunity at Billy Bishop in Toronto. So they'll be able to, the US government's already passed it. The Canadian Parliament is taking it up at this time. And so they'll be able to go in there and get pre-cleared. So once they get on the airplane, go into Burlington, they'll be able to step off and come right into Vermont without any more customs. So we're going to do the same thing for Amtrak out of Montreal. Same type of pre-clearance opportunity that will increase the amount of tourism, I believe, coming into Vermont from Canada, restore the Montrealer that was there at one time, and I think that it will be beneficial for Vermont in many, many different ways. So when we look at, again, I think it's all about relationships, and something that I've learned in racing up in Canada for 25 years of my life. You can't just proclaim that you're going to have a better relationship with Canada. You have to go there. You actually have to do the hard work. You have to establish those relationships because they mean something to them, just like they do to us. So we're going to continue along that road. I went to, last month I attended the Aerospace Trade Show in Montreal. And I was the only governor there. And I was literally going from booth to booth, talking with some folks that wanted to set up shop in Vermont or considering it. And I think that's, again, that face-to-face type of approach is something, we're small, but we're nimble. And we should use anything we can to try and court some of these companies to come in, and I'm willing to do it. Again, 5 or 500, I'm willing to go to anyone and ask them to come to Vermont, or the businesses that are here to try and expand. So to further drive economic development, I propose tax credits and initiatives designed to help new businesses while also supporting existing businesses and entrepreneurs, and invest in marketing that promotes Vermont as a great place to live, work, and do business. So one way Vermont has had success is in supporting entrepreneurs in generator and maker spaces I know I think you have one here as well, but I went into one in Burlington, and it was literally like joining a gym for $75 a month. They had all kinds of equipment in there. It was done in conjunction with Champlain College and UVM, and you could go in and use any machine they had in there, whether it was, they had 3D printers in there, they had wood laser cutting, they had wood turning lathes, vertical mills, welding machines, anything you could possibly want, but for $75 a month, it was like having exercise equipment, only it was equipment that you could make something with. So I think that these are something that we need in all 14 counties of the state, because I think that will try to spur economic development outside of Chittenden County as well. So I think we can support these vibrant and prosperous communities around the state through spaces like this, as well as initiatives like Brattleboro's focus on the creative economy and to support the arts as well. It's whatever works in your area we should capitalize on, or through downtown tax credits like those I propose in my budget. These are just a few examples how we can work together to grow the economy while focusing on making Vermont more affordable. These efforts start, of course, with a balanced budget that I propose and a commitment that I will not sign any bill or budget that adds new taxes or fees. And I put a fairly broad, bright line in the sand on this because I think Vermonters need a break. I think businesses need to catch their breath. And I think that this is the right approach to take. We're finding within state government literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of savings that we can do, we can initiate on our own, and again, taking a break from taxes and fees. And I think it sends a message to many that we're a place where you can do business. So I'm going to continue with that. The House follows suit. Their budget wasn't exactly what I wanted. I didn't make the investments in the areas that I wanted, but it was bipartisan support, and I think that that's the way we get something done, by working together, common goals. Another tool in our economic toolbox is housing, with a focus on workforce housing that attracts young professionals and helps working families afford homes, and that's why I propose, we're still pushing for, a $35 million housing bond in partnership with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. I think this makes all kinds of sense. We'll get this through. I know we're debating and negotiating on where the money will come from, but I'm confident that if we all want this, and this is an example, if we can find something where we have a common goal, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, a progressive, or independent, we all agree we want more affordable housing in this state. There's no reason we can't accomplish it. We just have to agree on the goal first and then work through the details and make it happen. So I see no reason we can't get there. So this is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to rebuilding our workforce. My budget prioritizes investment in workforce development, trades training, and higher education, because I know businesses like yours need a strong workforce in order to survive. And as we think about making Vermont more affordable, we must think about how we can make the state government more efficient. And I talked about this a little bit before, but working towards that goal, I created a new agency of digital services to handle and improve IT project management. What I found out was when I came into office that we had no idea what we're spending on IT. When we're trying to add it up, and there's no control over it whatsoever. All the agencies have their IT folks, and they're building custom-made IT software for whatever their needs are, but there's nobody overseeing the complexities of that and the cybersecurity that's so important these days. But we think there's about $500 million that's been committed to IT. So we're successful in establishing that IT agency, and I think that again, with cybersecurity being so important at this point in time, and trying to find economies of scale, I think that it's really important for us to do that. So I'm sure we're going to get through this final week or two of the legislative session, and again, if we can just concentrate on what we can do in common, common goals, working together, trying to break down the partisanship. I'm confident that we can accomplish this. Because if I truly believe, if we rethink how state government works, how we balance the budget, educate our kids, train our workforce, we can support our businesses and create more economic opportunity for all Vermonters. And we can reverse that 6, 3, and 1 trend and chart a course for a new and more prosperous future. So again, I'm confident we can do that, but we need to work together in order to accomplish it. So with that, be happy to take any questions, see where the discussion goes from there.
I have a microphone,
Okay.
so we'll all be able to
Kate
hear.
be in charge here.
So I think the idea of no new taxes is great, but there's a lot of talk that the new federal budget in this fall may have huge cuts for all the states, including
Right.
Vermont. Is that the time to reassess whether, to keep the services that Vermonters need, to reassess whether no new taxes is still appropriate?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, and it really is, we don't know what the federal government's going to do now. We can only control what we can control, and at this point in time, I think what we should do is just manage our own finances, and then I'm speaking with the pro tem and the speaker, and we're going to identify a time in October when we might have to come in for a special session if necessary. We are putting money aside right now in some of the reserves to make sure that we can continue with some of, prioritize. We all have to prioritize in our own businesses, our own lives, and state government's no different. So we put some money aside just in case, and then we may have to allocate some of those in the future. So we'll take one step at a time. But my bright line in the sand is about today. And if things change, obviously we're going to do whatever we can to follow those 3 guiding principles that I outlined initially. Making Vermont more affordable, growing the economy, but taking care of the most vulnerable, and we have an obligation to do so.
Governor, thank you. Steve Lorenz from Oak Meadow Independent Learning, and I'd like to thank you as a longtime educator here in Vermont, both in the private and public sector, for your focus on education right out the gate. My question with you, or for you, has to do with Act 77. So Oak Meadow Independent Learning provides services to Vermont schools and a number of Vermont families and students that want to look at alternative educational opportunities, particularly as it relates to personalized learning. And I was wondering if you have had a chance to look at Act 77, flexible pathways, personalized learning as it relates to our students. And if you haven't, I understand you are busy. And I know that the Agency of Education has been looking at that as well. It's been in effect for a while. But any thoughts on that, how that may play into some of your goals for the state with regards to education?
Yeah, again, I want to create an education system that is a magnet. I was struck when I went to Burton, for instance. I went there and visited the school for a day and went through all the classes, talked to a lot of students who were there. And I was struck by how many families actually came to Vermont because of Burton and the high quality education that they delivered. I also went to Linden Institute, another independent school up in Lindenville, and great quality education, drawing in from many different areas, quite a few, which was surprising to me, from Grand Isle County, of all things, and which is quite a distance away. But there's a boarding school as well, so they came for the education, the high quality education, and the way they deliver it is flexible as well, and trying to, education's not a whole lot different than healthcare in a lot of respects. We have to start thinking as much about the patient, about the student, as we do the process. And I was a different type of learner. I received my training. I love to build and create things. So I was in vocational training in the afternoons. I took my college prep in the morning. And there was a certain stigma attached to that. In the mornings, my college prep friends couldn't understand why I was going to vocational school in the afternoon. those in the vocational program in the afternoons thought of me as like a preppy a bit, going to college prep courses, and that stigma shouldn't be there. It really shouldn't. We got to break down that wall if we're going to get anywhere and bring that together, because education is education regardless of what it is. But what my point is, that I'm a different type of learner. I'm sure all of you are as well, and we need to be as flexible as we can in order to accomplish that, because we need all of us in different ways, different backgrounds, and different attributes in order to make all this work for us. So I'm encouraged to move forward. And again, I think if we do it right, that we'll be bringing those students in, we'll be bringing families in, which we desperately need, because we have this stagnant population in Vermont. It's been stagnant at 625,000 people for the last couple of decades. And it's the demographics that are shifting. And if we don't backfill that with a younger population, we're in trouble with, healthcare. We wonder why our healthcare continues prices, or it's not the prices that continue to rise, it's the usage. So it's because we're getting older, the demographics are shifting. So when we get older, the utilization rate is up. So we're using healthcare more. And so what we need is a younger, healthier population to broaden the pool, because they're healthier. Thank you.
Welcome, Governor. Drew Kasich, Saxon's River Distillery. As a local distiller, can we continue to look to your administration because for support, considering that we are a decent revenue stream? There's been a big growth in craft brewing and craft distillation in Vermont. Can we continue to look to you for support in that regard?
The simple answer is yes. I believe that we've done a pretty good job in making sure that we have a reputation of quality, and I think we should continue to do that. I did this Vermont Everyday Jobs tour. I've talked to some of you about that previously to this, but I worked in 35 different jobs over the last 5 years when I was lieutenant governor, and everything from beekeeping to teaching second grade, working at a emergency hospital, utility companies, ski bakeries. I mean, you name it, I probably have done it. A large animal vet, which was interesting. But I worked in a distillery as well for a day, and it's an area that I believe that we've done well at, and I believe that we can continue to do more in and capitalize on this good name that we have. So I'm all in.
Good afternoon, Governor. Adam Grinnell with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. I want to first thank you for your comments demonstrating the close nexus between early education, workforce, and our economy. So thank you for that. You also mentioned the economic toolbox, and for us here in Southern Vermont, one of the things we are really championing this legislative session is the lifting of the TIF moratorium.
Yeah.
And thank you for your support on that. We are hopeful that the proposal as it came out of the Senate and voted out of Commerce goes forward, but it sounds like there's some proposed changes coming out of Ways and Means with Janet Ansell's proposal. So as this goes into committee, if there's anything in this room that people can do to try to help get that back to where we were, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Adam. Thanks for all the work you do down here as well. I'm a believer in the TIFs, tax incremental financing. I think that it's part of our economic toolbox and something that we can capitalize on as well. It's been effective in many different communities, and there's been a pushback of sorts. They think that you're giving up something by investing in that area, that you're not going to receive the taxes that would normally, or from their perspective, would normally go into the coffers. But from my perspective, I don't believe the projects would ever be built. So I think that you're not foregoing anything because they wouldn't be there. But we do have some pushback. I think the Senate has reacted to my proposal and favorably. But there's Janet Ansell, Representative Ansell is the chair of Ways and Means in the House, and she just doesn't like TIFs. And so I would say to any of you, if you can, use any of your connections, your networking, trying to talk with your representatives, not just in this community, but if you have any other, in other areas of the state, reach out to them, because again, we need to utilize all the economic tools we have. We don't have a lot of them, but what we do have been effective, and this is another one that's effective. The housing bond is one, TIFs are another, and if we can get those two through this year, I think that'll be very helpful to the future. And the other thing that I would just say, there is, none of us we want certainty in our lives, both personally and in our businesses as well. I was in business for over 30 years, and when I found myself not being certain about the future, not having the confidence in the future, what I usually did was I hunkered down. I didn't do anything. I didn't grow my business. I didn't spend any money. I did just what we all do when we're faced with that challenge. But I'm starting to feel it's about confidence in the regulatory process, the government, the stock market, whatever it is. It's all based on some confidence that you can recoup whatever you're investing. So I'm feeling throughout the state that there's a little bit of confidence out there, and it's tough to measure. But when I go to businesses, visiting businesses, small and large throughout the state, they're starting to add employees. There's one company, a fairly large company, that's talking about adding over 100 employees in the next year. That's good news for that community. And this is outside of Chittenden County, by the way. 100 in Chittenden County doesn't mean a lot, or doesn't mean as much as it does in other parts of the state. But this one was in the Rutland area. And so that's what we need, just a little bit more confidence in what we do. And you do that by being predictable. And that's what I want to do with state government, with the administration. What I've said is I'm trying to be as clear as possible about my expectations, and to create some predictability in the future. So you can count on whether it's no new taxes and fees for this year, you can count on that, or whether we're going to focus on the areas that make the most sense and make investments in areas that will help us in the future. They can count on that. And again, if we're going to grow this economy, we have to focus on workforce development, because if we can grow the economy, if we don't have anybody to fill the positions, we're in trouble. So that's the other piece, that it all needs to work together, and I look forward to your input, but as well, all of us kind of focusing on that, so that we really can. We're a small enough state, so we can change the dynamics, and we can become more prosperous.
Oh, we go.
Good to see you in Brattleboro, Governor.
It's
A couple
good to be
questions
here.
as far as tax. I've heard some talk about increasing the franchise tax on solid waste, maybe possibly this next year in legislation. And then I wonder about the carbon tax as far as trying to get people into Vermont, in our area.
Yeah, the franchise tax is not something I've heard about, but there's always talk about something in terms of whether it's tax on cleanup of Lake Champlain or maybe in that area as well. But what we have to do is, again, let's plan this out. Let's make sure we're doing whatever we're doing for the right reasons, and let's make sure that we don't grow any faster. If we can take a break this year, is my thought is, take a break this year, no new taxes and fees. Next year, then we can tie it to the rate of inflation, so that our budget doesn't grow any faster than our economy does. And we have a formula for doing that. So if we can go into next year, it might be, if we're growing at a rate of 1 or 2% or something like that, then, and we have this formula that would indicate that, then we'll develop a budget that doesn't grow any faster than that. So it doesn't mean that we're going to try and hold the line forever on no new taxes and fees. It just means that we're going to limit that rate of growth in the future. As well, what was the second? Oh, the carbon tax. I know there's still talk about that. Again, we can't do it, from my perspective, we just can't do it alone here in Vermont. It just makes no sense, because we're a very small state. To impose a tax like that would have a ratcheting effect on the cost of living in Vermont throughout. I mean, because as businesses, if we're forced to pay a carbon tax, that means that you have to raise your prices in order to recoup that. I mean, it's a basic fundamental formula. I mean, it just doesn't come out of thin air. So I'm very resistant to the carbon tax. I just don't think it's the way we should be going here in the state of Vermont.
Good afternoon, Governor. Joellen Tarallo. I'm Executive Director of the Center for Health and Learning, a statewide nonprofit partner to many state initiatives. I wanted to address issues related to health in Vermont, and we have some very high and positive health indexes, and we should celebrate those. We also have some challenges, which I know you've been trying to address. Very, very high alcohol and marijuana use rate among our teens and early young adults, and we have a higher than 30% above average across all ages suicide rate in Vermont. Can you give us an idea what your current thinking is about approach on these issues around mental health and the opiate addiction in Vermont? Thank you.
The opioid problem that we have here in Vermont is one that's very real, and I've said it during the campaign. I give a great deal of credit to Governor Shumlin for highlighting this initially. When he did, I wasn't quite sure that this was something that we should be highlighting, but I was proven wrong. This really is a problem that we face here in the state. Many states are facing it as well, but it seems to hit us a little bit harder, and maybe just because of our small population. That's why I said from the beginning that we were going to address this issue. I set up by executive order an opioid council where the first meeting is going to be in May. I've appointed a director of drug addiction, which is Jolinda LeClaire, and she's been working on this. We had a statewide summit at Vermont Technical College 2 weeks ago to address some of the employment opportunities in terms of more counselors that we desperately need, and how do we address that, and how do we utilize the state college system in doing so as well, and other institutions. So we're working on that. It's like all hands on deck. I think of our addiction issue as a three-legged stool. We need to have more prevention. We need to have more treatment, and we need to have an equal amount of enforcement. So that's the three-legged stool. I think we're doing pretty well on the enforcement part. We've made we're not looking to try and find those who are users. We're trying to find those who are distributors. So we're working with our counterparts in other New England states. I'm part of this coalition of Northeast governors, and I brought this up with them, and I've met with them as a group to try and do whatever we can regionally to address this issue, because it's becoming more and more rampant for them as well, and it's really interesting to hear their perspective. The governor of Maine had said I was talking about fentanyl, and that's becoming more and more of an issue. And he said we're finding that the new way to distribute heroin particularly in Maine, but all around the seacoast, is by fishing boat, by these where the iconic fishermen are distributing. And so if you think about all the coast that they have in Maine, down through into Massachusetts, around into Rhode Island, it makes more sense to me now than it did then. But so I guess the bottom line is we're taking this seriously. We know we have to invest in those areas. We have to have more counselors, and we have to all work together. That's why I wanted to form this council, much like the Project Vision in Rutland, where they take people from all walks of life in order to address this, whether it's corrections or the local law enforcement, state law enforcement, even public works gets involved in this, and mental health and so forth. So everyone is at the table and trying to identify where these hot spots are throughout the Rutland County area. And I'm saying that we need to address it the same way on the statewide level.
We've got one last question for you.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Governor. I'm sure you know last week the President proposed eliminating the federal estate tax, and the amount of the Vermont exemption is roughly half that of the current federal exemption. And I don't know whether this was discussed during the current legislative session, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the Vermont estate tax and whether this is something that your administration is going to be addressing.
Yeah. Well, I talked about this a lot during the campaign as well. The estate tax, I know there's some who don't feel that this has an effect on us, and they look at it as being just the rich folks that have to worry about their estate taxes, but I would contend that's just not the case, and it affects a lot of businesses as well throughout the state. We find, I know a lot of people, affluent business people that have retired, and then they're given advice about what to do next, and they become citizens of residents of Florida instead, for instance, or North Carolina or Tennessee or wherever it is, because of the estate tax. So I think of the same, I know we have to take one step at a time, but if we can grow this economy and bring in more revenue organically, what we should be doing when we're doing that is making sure that we're reducing the tax burden to make Vermont more affordable, whether it's the estate tax, whether it's the Social Security tax, or it's the tax on military benefits. We need to reduce those as we have more revenue. Let's address that so that we can make Vermont more attractive and we can make Vermont more affordable in the future. So that's one of the taxes that I think we should address. But can we do it today with the burden that we have right now? Probably not. But we can take another approach and incrementally reduce those tax burdens.
I lied, Governor. I have one more question.
That's all right.
We want to know, are you still a race car driver?
Oh, well, I didn't get to race yesterday. I was going to race. I've been racing something for probably 35 years of my life, and for the last 25 racing cars throughout the Northeast and Canada. So when I became elected, I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to. I wasn't sure security would allow it. I wasn't sure my schedule would allow it. Two things they do to you when you become elected. They take away your car keys, and they take away your scheduling privileges. So you lose your independence of sorts. So I wasn't sure that was going to happen. But we negotiated a deal where I could race in 5 or 6 races. So I was supposed to race this weekend, yesterday in particular. And I did practice on Saturday, and I said I'd play it by ear, and if I thought I still had the talent to do so, I would race the next day. So I was in the top 5 in practice all day Saturday, and then it rained out yesterday. So I have to wait for another day.
We want to give you a small token of our appreciation for you being here today.
Oh, thank you.
The Chamber of Commerce publishes a book called Brattleboro Pages in Time, and it's about the history of our town. And we're going to give it to you, and we're going to give you a quiz the next time you come back.
Great. I'll never be back. Very much.
Thank you so much for coming, and we're going to have more events like this in the future, so come back. We'll let you know. Thank you.